spectre of war reaching out and grabbing at the heart of Western democracy. As someone who sat at their grandmother's knee listening to heart-wrenching tales of her time in Dachau prisoner of war camp, or hearing my grandfathers talk of their time, one as a paratrooper, one as a tank driver, liberating the ghettos and war camps that littered Eastern Europe, we now see 1939 happening all over again. We have all seen the terrible scenes played out on our screens in the latest theatre of Russian aggression as they attempt to terrorise and massacre a sovereign state and its citizens, whose only crime was to seek to become more European, rather than to return to being a client state of a maniacal dictator. The punishment for this crime, so it seems, is the annihilation of the Ukrainian peoples, women, children and all. This is not a war that is raging, but a genocide of those who dare to dream of freedom, of a democratic future where the will of the people is the most important consideration, not the will of an ageing tyrant desperate to secure his legacy in his own last days as they roll in. For those who have followed this conflict, we've been reminded of the ever-precious role real news plays in an age of social media and state-run disinformation campaigns. We've seen unlikely actors come to the fore. While Russia today prints only what is demanded of it, Elon Musk moves his satellites over the Ukraine to ensure the real-time flow of information. The global anonymous movement spreads the news of the aggression to the Russian people, attacking state-run news agents and planting information in the most unassuming places to allow it spread. Apple has disabled mapping, and Visa and MasterCard have restricted payment. This new age of defiance is to be commended. It's a stark reminder that in the age of cyber warfare, the battle is not just fought on the ground, it's fought on the front page of the newspapers, on our televisions, and on the news scroll of social media. We must never forget the importance of a free and honest media. Mr. Chairman, we've seen various claims from the Putin regime of why it has taken these actions. Firstly, we had an argument of security. That was shown, and that it was necessary to denazify the Ukraine. When that was shown to be absurd, it was about liberation. But anyone with access to even a smartphone can tell you that the last thing this war is liberation. Then finally, we saw an absolutely ludicrous notion that it was about preventing the Ukraine from gathering a nuclear arsenal. Well, let me say this, Mr. Chairman. When you claim to be denazifying whilst bombing the largest Holocaust memorial in Europe, when you claim to be preventing nuclearization of the first state in history to voluntarily give up its nuclear weapons, and when you claim to be liberating the very civilians who you shell with reckless abandonment, you show yourself to be a tyrant, a liar, a war criminal and a coward, and the despotic Vladimir Putin is undoubtedly on all four. Mr. Chairman, as we sit in this chamber now, the lifeblood of our local democracy, the very quintessence of local autonomy and decision-making, where we try our very best every day to ensure that our residents' freedoms, principles and human rights are robustly upheld, citizens in cities are being cut off and bombed into oblivion. Supply lines to civilian populations cut to starve them out, reminiscent of a barbaric medieval siege. There is no doubt that the most horrific crimes perpetrated in war are happening right this second within the borders of the Ukraine. In Mariupol in the south, they have now been without electricity, lighting and water for 2 days, and food supplies are rapidly dwindling. While in Kherson, the largest city to be captured so far, we've seen reports of Russian soldiers ransacking supermarkets, desperate to restock their own supplies and leaving residents there of the city with nothing but expired food rations that they've discarded. It seems that Putin's army must march at any cost, even if that cost is the starvation of thousands of women and children. How can that be the cost worth paying? These people never picked up a gun before. They picked up a pen, Mr. Chairman, and a ballot paper, and they voted for change, and now they suffer appallingly for it. And were every citizen not doing their absolute utmost to prevent the aggressive occupation of their homes and villages, I have no doubt many more would already be suffering. In creating this war, Vladimir Putin hoped not only to break the Ukraine, but to break the spirit of cooperation and peaceful enterprise that has pervaded throughout Europe since the fall of the Iron Curtain. He sought to isolate, to pick apart the Ukraine and any remaining prospects of the collaborative partnerships and defence agreements between the nations of NATO and the nations of Europe? Well, Mr. Chairman, on every count he has failed, and he has failed miserably. Ukraine remains defiant through, though pressured, and across the rest of the world, we've seen levels of solidarity, coordination and charity practically unseen in my own lifetime, as people from all nations scrape together whatever they can in order to provide some help to the oppressed. As of today, we know over 1 million people have fled the fighting in Ukraine. Many more would have too, were they not trapped in their own homes, too afraid to leave lest they suffer the agonising death of a missile strike or, even worse, an oxygen bomb. As the fight rages and some people are able to escape, we have no doubt that this number will rise exponentially. Vulnerable people will be in desperate need of clothing, food, shelter and protection. But I'm proud to say that within Ashfield, residents too have taken to the task of donating whatever they can to help. It's incredible to see so many of our local communities organising collections to aid those in need. Pubs like Speed the Plough, where Mandy Bainbridge has turned a tap room into a collection centre. Our fire service setting up at Ashfield Station to collect and redistribute items of need. And of course Taylor's Transport, who are directly shipping collections to areas where they're needed the most. Only today, I've received requests from Oxfam, the Red Cross and UNICEF, sending messages that they are now at the point where the most helpful thing we can do as local citizens is monetary donations. I want to make it clear that we'll be providing links to donate to all these causes on the front page of Ashfield Council's website for businesses and residents who are able to contribute. In Ashfield District, we have a proud history of charity, of camaraderie and of defiance to dictatorial regimes, and I'm proud to say that in the last week that flame has burned brighter than ever before, and I want to thank all of those who are helping. In solidarity, Mr. Chairman, with this, I want to make it clear that we stand here ready as an authority, ready to help in whatever way we can, whether that be food or shelter or clothing. We are here and we refuse to stand by and let the history books say when the time comes we didn't help. In finishing, Mr. Chairman, I'll just say this. Mój z tobою, nasi motywojestu za was, mój z twojeju Ukrainy urodziny. Ukraine, Ashfield stands with you. Ashfield's residents and their prayers are with you. Ashfield Council is with you, and our hearts and our homes are open to you. We will do what we can and what we must to protect you from the beast of war on your doorstep. And we will stand resolutely and steadfastly by your side until you triumph. Thank you.